Okay, people are in now.
Well, there we are. All right, we're with you. We've been waiting. It's taken a very long time for this wonderful software to connect, but we are now out there with you in the world.
Exactly. Good to see everybody. The water is, as
Yeah.
always, warm.
And every week it's getting warmer. We we're headed towards the nice weather season. Happy baseball season for those of you who celebrate.
Yes. It is. It is the best day of the year, right? I mean, well, I guess
Yeah.
it's in Japan. It's opening up, right?
Well,
Um,
we want to talk quickly about where politics and sports intersect. Tonight's game, the opening game, is inaccessible to anyone who doesn't have a Netflix subscription. And there was a big column in The Athletic adding up how much you have to spend on cable and streaming to get all of the games from the sports. And it's outrageous. I think there's going to be a politician who's going to come along and say, guys, that like we're not going to go for this and make it like a big crusade, because to get baseball games, you need Peacock, you need Netflix, you need ESPN or ESPN Plus. You need your local RSN in some
it's
cases,
same thing with basketball.
right?
You have to have what's it called, League
Amazon.
Pass or Peacock, or you can occasionally catch games on ESPN or TNT. I guess it is. Not TNT.
It's like we undid cable. We had this thing called a bundle where you got
Yeah.
everything. And now it's just all over the place, and you need subscriptions to everything. And eventually there's going to be a bubble where fans start to revolt. But um it's not it's not a good thing. And I do think there's an opening for like sort of like the junk feed kind of stuff where there's a populist opening to politicians who go go all in on stuff that we all hate, but that isn't a big deal. Just as
Right.
something of like, hey, I'm going to make your life better in all those small ways that add to your quality of life.
Yeah. Look. I mean, whatever. I mean, this is like everything now, right? Everything just is more expensive. Everything is more difficult, and the sports thing
Donald
is just
Trump's
one more
America.
example. Donald Trump's
Duh.
America. Donald Trump's America. It's true. Um, I agree with Spencer there. I mean, I have so many streaming channels, and then I pick up one of them if I want to watch a show or something for a month, and then I forget to unsubscribe, and it's just like an unending stream of these things. I mean, I basically, I have Amazon, I have Netflix, um, but I try to reduce it. Paramount, I try to reduce as much as I can, but it's hard because there's just so many different options out there. And imagine you could have all the content in one place, like we used to have like 10 years ago in
Right.
cable.
Right, right. Like, I mean, and the worst part is the advantages that you once had um uh to streaming are gone. Like, and this actually mirrors the history of cable, where initially streaming came out as okay, you pay a fee, so you're not gonna have ads. And now if you don't pay like a second fee, you're paying that fee and there's ads interrupting
Right.
your programming. And this was literally cable. They were like, well, if you pay a subscription for this channel, we're going to give you this premium channel. And they're like, oh, but we can do that and do ads. And we can
Right.
make
So
even
now
more
you watch
money.
Amazon movies on Amazon, and you are basically paying for you have to pay to not have ads. I don't
Yeah.
want that. I don't want ads.
I mean, the only thing I've heard is more ridiculous. And again, I think that there's a political opening is I think it was BMW a few years ago was charging people a monthly subscription to use their heated seats
Are you serious?
in the car. Yeah, that got like a lot of social media chatter going. But
I'm
and I
sure.
mean there was also something with somebody with a printer where like if you didn't subscribe to their cartridge service, they like shut your printer off. I forget which company it was
Oh
to
my.
rip them. But like there is an opening on the populist, either left or right or both, that says, you know what? No, we're not going to let people get gouged left and right constantly on all this little shit that they hate.
Right.
And that we're going to do something to like help the consumer.
Well, actually, wait. I got to say one thing because Spencer brought this up about the worst thing is out of market sports. My issue that drives me crazy is that I whenever the Pistons are playing. I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. That's why. So I subscribe to what's it called, League Pass. So I can watch them. But whenever they play a New York team, the Knicks or the Nets, I can't watch the game because it's only on
Yep.
local television. I don't have local television. I don't have cable. So basically there's no way to watch them when they're playing a local team. It's ridiculous. I mean, I these blackout rules, it's so frustrating.
All of
It's
it
so
is
frustrating.
ridiculous. I mean, I sit there, I have Peacock, I have Apple TV Plus. These are all just to watch the 162 Phillies games that I used to be able to watch on cable.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's incredibly
and
frustrating.
it's very frustrating. And again, some people will say, well, these are not the big issues. You've got war, you've got healthcare, you've got all these things, and that's true. But they are quality of life issues,
Yeah.
and more every day, people's quality of life has gone down, and all these little inconveniences and things, and they would love for a politician to say, "Hey, no, we're not going to let the companies gouge you." I mean, uh,
Actually, I got to relate something because about this. I'm going to bitch mode right here, but I'm flying to England next week with my kids for vacation, and it was supposed to be a family reunion with my brother who lives in Israel and his daughter. Well, now they can't come because of the war. All the flights have been canceled. So I wanted to change the ticket, but of course I have a basic economy because flying two kids to Europe is incredibly expensive. I should have paid the more expensive one, but I thought, well, what's going to happen? Would there be a war? So
never in Trump's world do you
yeah,
think that.
exactly. So I should only pay for the more expensive air ticket now because Trump could have start another war. But what's frustrating about it was like I called them up and I'm like, look, I got to change them. I'm platinum on American Airlines. Like I've flown them for years, and you can't imagine the rigmarole I had to go through to get this ticket changed. And it's like I get this base economy, but to buy a more expensive ticket would have cost like hundreds of dollars more. And it's like it's like they just make it more and more difficult. And now, by the way, it's my favorite part. You don't get miles anymore if you fly basic economy. You have to pay the expensive ticket to even get miles. It's just I don't know. It's
I,
always something.
I'm
It seems like it makes me crazy.
I'm waiting for the airlines to figure out that they can charge you to use the bathroom. And this is companies across the board have realized, hey, we can come up with this new fee. We can come up with this new thing. The way markets are supposed to work, the way conservatives tell us that markets work is if companies are not serving the needs of the public, you get a new one that comes in that drives costs down, that makes things better. But no, the reality of it is one company pioneers some new fee that everyone's outraged about for 5 minutes. And then everyone else is like, we can do this too. And they're not going to have any choice because we're all going to do it. And you see it in industry after industry after industry. I mean, if you go around and talk to people, whether it's they're having problems with their health insurer or a doctor, trying to figure out something covered and they spend 2 hours on the phone, whether it's airlines, whether it's, sports viewing, it's just things are getting worse and worse
But by the way,
because
yeah, just for the record, I spent an hour and a half on the phone with American Airlines to be told at the end of that conversation they couldn't change my ticket. Eventually, I had to call back 2 days later, and they were able to change it. Don't ask me why I was not able to do it earlier. But, that's the bullshit you deal with these days. It's incredibly
yeah,
frustrating. Yeah,
yep.
there's no actual market with air travel or television or healthcare. It's true. It's true.
Right.
100%. I mean,
Right.
healthcare actually
The,
there
the,
is because you can choose your healthcare plan like I do. I choose on Obamacare. The problem, of course, with choosing healthcare and Obamacare is that you have to be a fucking rocket scientist to understand what the different elements are of these healthcare plans. I mean, it's insane. Like I literally remember years ago not understanding the difference between different kinds of plans, calling up New York State, the health, what's it called, the exchange, and not able to get a straight answer about any of these plans because nobody understands them.
I had a situation a couple of years ago. A new company came into the market in Philadelphia. And I was trying to figure out this looks as good as my old plan, but why is it $150 a month cheaper? Like, how is this possible? Well, it
Right.
took me like 9 months to figure out when I got a check from my old health insurer for like an extra month of health insurance because they had like been charging too much. There's Obamacare caps how
Oh
much they
yeah,
can charge
right.
for
You get
things.
money back. Yeah.
And they were just being more conservative about how much they were going to spend on healthcare costs, whereas the other company was cutting it closer, and therefore didn't have to issue a refund, but they were charging you a lot less money, and that was the main difference. And I mean, just finding out is something covered where
Yeah. I know.
and that don't even get me started on things like you check and find out your surgeon is covered or your doctor, but the anesthesiologist might not be. You
So
know,
I gotta recount this. So I'm sorry, you guys. We're gonna get into politics in a second, but this is sort of this
This
piece
is
worth bitching
politics,
about.
though, on some level.
Yeah, no, it is. It's true. It's true. So I switched healthcare plans this year because the place I was usually using the price went way up, and actually liked the healthcare plan. It was pretty good for the most part. The biggest thing for me is I take some prescription medication. It's kind of expensive, so I I'm looking for the one that has like no deductible, drug deductible, nothing like that. And I thought so. I found a plan that was like similar, but $100 less a month or something, 150 less a month. I got that one. But before the year was over, I called up my doctor and I'm like, prescribe me like 6 months of the medication
Yep.
because I know that when I have to get this thing re-upped, it is going to be a complete shit show and I don't want to deal with it. So just like give me 6 months and I'll deal with it like in 6 months from now. Like literally that's what I did. And he was nice enough to do it for me. But like that's the kind of situation like you have to sort of find workarounds because I know that when I go to the drugstore and I say, here's my prescription, buy this drug, which is covered, they are going to give me a total runaround. I know it. So it is what it is.
It's just a terrible system, and it's like the one thing that I think Bernie Sanders gets right in terms of like
Yeah.
messaging is
Easy there, Brian. Easy there.
corporate power. His attack of things, like if you could actually connect it to these everyday experiences that annoy every American every day, I think that
Right.
there's an opening, a lane there. And the irony is like Trump recognized the opening for populism rhetorically, and he doesn't, because he has the attention span of like a mouse on
A fruit
cocaine or
fly.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fruit fly. He has not been able to actually yoke this to policy, and he lets the bunch of old fashioned Reagan conservatives in the Congress drag him around to positions that are not politically populist or popular. But like he recognized that there is an opening for, hey, let me attack the powerful, the wealthy. Um, and he's just not been able to deliver on that, and Democrats haven't figured out how to do this without proposing huge multi-trillion dollar Bernie style programs, which become unpopular the minute you tell Americans how much they have to pay for them.
Look, I always make this point, and I think it's worth keeping in mind that when it comes to policy, on any, I don't care if it's healthcare policy, trade policy, any policy at all, policies are only popular if you want to take them away from people, not if you want
Yeah.
to actually implement them. Because people, I wrote about this in my book, my American Maelstrom book about the 68 election, about sort of the aftermath of 68. And one of the, I think, really palpable aftermaths of that election, of that period, was that Republicans really convinced voters that if you give something to one group, it means that you're taking away from another group, that namely you. So like expanding, economic opportunity for people of color was going to hurt white people, right? Providing social benefits, social assistance benefits was going to somehow hurt somebody else. And that idea, I think, has become so sort of inculcated in the mindset of the electorate. I always think one of my favorite stats from the Obamacare debate in 2009 was which, do you know which group was most opposed to Obamacare?
Uh, White Christian, like,
Old people. Old people.
oh,
Why?
okay.
Because they were
'Cause they already
convinced
had their
that they were going to lose their Medicare, or that they were convinced that if you that you don't, there's a pie, and if you take a piece of the pie and give it to somebody else, it means less for everybody else, as opposed to like they believing that like you could actually increase the size of the pie. No, they don't believe that. They just think if it's a zero sum game. And so
yeah.
whenever you sort of implement a new policy, right, there's just going to be people who are going to feel like I'm going to get hurt by this. I'm going to be affected by this. This isn't always the case, but I think it's often the case, especially with like social programs. And you certainly saw this with Obamacare. People were convinced that this was going to affect their healthcare negatively. In reality, it gave more than 20 million Americans access to healthcare they didn't have before. And while I bitch and moan about if I pay for healthcare, um, my healthcare plan was pretty good. It's too expensive, but it was pretty good, and it was a hell of a lot cheaper than what I paid before Obamacare. Before Obamacare, if any of you know, it was absolutely cost you a fortune. Yeah, no, Spencer, you're right. It's not enough that we win with cat, a bunch of dogs sitting around saying that not if that we win, the cats have to lose. I do really think that's a big part of what drives so much of the debate, the sort of policy debates. Is just people think that they're going to get taken advantage of, so they don't want to go along with it. Um, Okay, so let's talk.
Since you brought
Yeah,
up your 68 book, you jogged a thought. I was annoyed by a popular commentator on X a little while ago who was moaning about or uh, treating it like a big deal that Democrats are really unpopular with men. And the reason that your 68 book triggered the rant I want to go on is party brand does not matter. Okay. Watergate, the Republican brand was as crappy as it could possibly have been. They were going for a third term, and yet Gerald Ford lost by the lash of an eye. It was like 15,000 votes in Ohio and Hawaii, I believe, that
yeah.
determined that election.
Who, Ford?
Elections are about
It was
candidates.
Mississippi, Ohio, Hawaii.
Yeah,
Some of those three
it was
states.
like all these very narrow wins that amounted to like less than a concert, crowd.
Right.
Okay. And that was despite the Republican brand being awful. People do not vote on party brand. They don't vote on, Democrats are minus 50, Republicans are minus 40, so the Republicans are going to win the election. No, they vote on the candidate. They vote on who is in front of them.
Well, actually, I'm going to push back a little bit. I think they vote based on who's in power. Right. So
Yeah.
I saw this. There was a poll. I mean, all these polls, Democrats poll really poorly at a low approval rating. And my response is always nobody gives a shit. It doesn't matter. And I look back at like 2014 when Republicans won the Senate, picked up seats in the House, and that was Obama's second midterm. Their approval rating was lower than Democrats before that election. It was lower. It didn't matter. So we are living in an era of insane anti-incumbency, like nothing we've seen really before. And this is really a direct result of polarization. It's because the country's so narrowly divided that just a small segment of the electorate can shift elections one way or the other. And that small segment of the electorate tends to be focused above all on throwing the bums out, whoever's in power at that time.
Well, I think some of it's polarization, but I also think some of it's the stuff we were talking about at the beginning of like costs and life getting harder. People keep looking for a politician who is going to make things better. Where they wake up and one day and say, "Okay, here's a demonstrable benefit in my life that has made my life better and easier." And they haven't gotten it. Obamacare did a wonderful job of making healthcare more accessible to people. It did not bend the cost curve. It did not um start bringing down costs. Plans go up every year. It didn't do the affordable part for a lot of people. It did do the access part of helping people get health care. But Obama, I don't think if you go to the average Democratic, even Democratic voter and say, what did Barack Obama do that made your life better? I'm not sure that many of them could answer that.
Yeah.
And I think Republicans feel that way about Trump. Some of the people who voted for Trump in 2024 because they were frustrated about prices, about groceries, about inflation, all this stuff. They voted for Trump, and what has he done? He's driven those prices that much higher. And they're disillusioned. And I think the election of Trump was
But
in some ways.
yeah, but I think I mean, look, if you go back to like '06, I think '06 is maybe that's where you can start this. Every election since then has been an anti-incumbent election, right? '06 was a backlash against Trump, against Bush, excuse me. '08 was an even harsher pushback against Bush. 10 was a pushback against Obama. Republicans won the House. 12, I guess 12 is kind of the exception there because it really was it
But
was your
even
last,
there,
like. Go ahead.
I would look at 4 and 12 as years in which, by historical standards,
Yeah,
incumbents won by pretty narrow
that's
margins.
true. No, that's true. That's a really good point. I mean, '04 was the lowest incumbent reelection, smallest incumbent reelection margin since 1916. 12, Obama won like 5 points, but it wasn't a huge. Well, yeah, that's not a huge
But he,
victory for
he
an
won
incumbent
fewer
reelection.
states than he had won in 2008.
Right,
He won by a
right,
narrower margin. Like this was not Reagan or Clinton, or Johnson for Kennedy's second term, where they won by margins that were much larger than the first time around.
right,
Obama won in 2012 by a solid amount, but he lost, I think it was North Carolina and Indiana that he had won 4 years
right,
earlier.
right.
It wasn't all that impressive by historical standards.
Right, but then okay, then we go to 14. That's an anti-incumbent
14th
election,
wave.
right? Republicans take back the Senate. 16, anti-incumbent backlash against Obama, against Democrats. Trump wins 18, backlash against Trump. 20, backlash against Trump again. Biden wins 22. Actually, 22 slight exception also because that should have been backlash
Dobbs.
to Biden and it wasn't. Dobbs changed things, also bad candidates for Republicans. And then 24 was a backlash to Biden and to Democrats. So 26 looks very much like a backlash to Trump. Now, again, these kind of cycles are not unusual. We do have, like, midterms are always the backlash. What is different is that we have had three different presidents of different parties in the last four elections. Democrat 12, Republican 16, Democrat 20, Republican 24. That has not happened in American politics since the 1890s, Grover Cleveland. We have also had in the last three presidential cycles, 16, 20, and 24, each party winning a governing trifecta. Okay, Republicans won in 16, Democrats in 20, Republicans in 24. That's never happened in American politics, ever. Okay,
But
so you are in this insane period of extreme anti-incumbency, which I expect will continue in 26 and 28.
and I would just add one other thing, which is in 16, 20, 24, all three times, the guy who won the presidency, his party lost House seats, which is incredibly unusual, and it
Is that
reflects
true?
the
They lost
yes,
House seats in 24?
yes, they lost like one or two,
Huh.
um,
Okay.
I believe, or at least they had lost from the last election. It was a little bit skewed because the Democrats had picked up like a seat in a special election too.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but like their margin, they certainly there were no coattails, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
and I would my only disagreement with Michael on this point is I would go back even further. I think this starts with Jimmy Carter and the outsider. The idea of like you run against Washington, that Washington is a problem post Watergate, post Vietnam. If you look at who we elected after that, it was governors, it was outsiders. And I think that's the root. And what happens is as people become more dissatisfied with those governors, they say, okay, you might be, an outsider, but you haven't delivered. We've been trying for 30 years. It hasn't worked. They start looking for more and more extreme solutions. So they're throwing the bums out. Um,
Well, but here's the problem with that argument. I think a little bit like post Carter, you pretty much you have four presidents, right? Four presidents out of five who win a second term. Reagan, Bush, not first Bush, older Bush, Clinton, Bush, and then Obama, right? So you have like the traditional patterns of politics. Where, like, first of all, most incumbents get reelected. It is unusual for an incumbent not to get reelected. In fact, I think before Bush, it only happened twice in the 20th century. It was Taft in 1912, which was really just a byproduct of having Roosevelt running as an independent, but as a sort of moderate Republican. And then Hoover in 28. And is that it? Is that it? I know in 32 he didn't win re-election. Sorry, he won in 20, he lost in 32. And then I guess Ford, if you want to count that, but not really, because that's just Nixon's second term. Oh no, Carter. Sorry, Carter. And look, in two of those three situations, Hoover and Carter, it was because you had a terrible economy. Then it happens with Bush in 92 for the same reason, shitty economy. But again, it's unusual. It's does not happen that often. And then you have four out of five presidents or I'm sorry, let me think, three straight presidents where it doesn't happen. Three straight? Yeah. Clinton, Bush, Obama. And now you have back to back in the last three elections or change last three elections. And you could have it again in 28. Democrat wins in 28. You'd have five straight cycles in which the White House flips. That's never happened. That's never happened in American politics, right? We have the thing that's I think people hard to understand who are a little bit younger is like we used to have dramatic consistency in American politics, right? Remember from 40, what was it, 50, no, 56 to no, 96? Yeah, no, 54 to 94, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives.
yes. Oh
40
yeah.
frigging
40
years.
years and
Uh,
26 years in the Senate, 54 to
26 years in
8.
the Senate.
Um,
It has flipped. I mean, and it has flipped back and forth since then, right? Democrats win back the House
and
in,
there's actually
go ahead, sorry, yeah.
there's political science literature that shows that back and forth, that it becoming competitive has led to a lot of what people hate about paralysis and legislative
Yeah,
dysfunction
well,
because
who's to blame for
you
that?
well, GOP, but to
No, the
some
voters.
extent,
The
but
voters are to blame for that.
well, that too, sure, but like back when Republicans saw themselves as a perpetual minority, there was an incentive to get along, to work together constructively.
Right. Right.
Once it became, well, if you make Congress bad enough and dysfunctional enough and crappy enough, they might change. The voters might change who's in control. Then you had every incentive to obstruct and be, not constructive at all, when you were in the minority. And so that has kind of shifted things. And like I said, I basically agree with Michael. I would just point out that 76 Carter comes out of nowhere as an outsider running. I'm from Plains, Georgia. I'm different. Then he gets drummed out in 1980 because he wasn't a particularly good president and the economy was awful. They nominate Ronald Reagan, who had been a governor, had never been served in Washington in any capacity. Reagan does get reelected in a landslide, and H.W. Bush kind of defies the pattern. But then Democrats come back with Bill Clinton, small town Arkansas governor from, outsider. I'm going to upend DC. And by the way, it didn't go well his first year when he
Right.
brought all the outsiders in. Um, you
But
know,
I just want to, can I cut in for 1 second to say, like, I think the one thing about what you just said that I think is underappreciated, you're right. I agree with what you said, but what's happened in American politics, and not many people talk about this, is that we replaced a parochial political system with a polarized and partisan political system, right? So when I say parochial, I mean, you had parties where the the Southern Democrats were more united with the sort of, I guess, Western Republicans or conservative Republicans than they were with the Northern Republicans. And the Northern Republicans, Northern Democrats were, largely on the same page, not just an issue like civil rights, but for often for parochial reasons, right? You would have Republican senators and Democratic senators working together, say from the Northeast, for them that would benefit their region. You might have that for like senators in the far West, senators in the plains, like a farm bill, for example. It wouldn't matter if it was Democrat or Republican; it just mattered that these were agricultural-based state economies that relied on a generous farm bill. That has completely evaporated in American politics, right? You used to have, like 30, 40 years ago, you would have, I think, more than half of the Senate of the states had senators from each party. Now it's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 states. Now it's more than ever because of what happened in 2004, but it was 6, I think, before 2004. It might be 10 or 11. No, it might be, I'm
states
sorry,
with
6
senators
total.
from
Three,
both parties.
no, it was 3 states, 6, it was 3 states then. It's before 24.
It's Wisconsin, it's Pennsylvania.
And yeah, it's the 4 swing
Um,
states and Maine. And that might be it.
well, yeah, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania,
Maine, and I think
uh,
that's it now
that might be it,
because
actually.
all the red
No, no,
state,
no.
like,
No. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. The states with senators from different parties. You also, by the way, had states that would sometimes vote for a Democratic senator and a Republican president, right? Like I always make this point. I think it's
all,
hilarious that in the early aughts, like the Dakotas had 3 Democratic senators. It's crazy to think about what they did, and
four
those states were is it 4?
until Daschle loses in 2004. It's Daschle and Tim Johnson from South
You're
Dakota
right.
and Byron
Sorry, you are
Dorgan
correct.
and Kent Conrad. I think, and I'm ballparking the numbers here, not looking them up, but I believe in 2004, Bush won North Dakota by like 30 points, and Byron Dorgan, the relatively liberal Democratic senator, also won by 30 points.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
That never happens anymore. That never happens.
no,
There is one state in which there's a Republican senator from a state that Harris won. One state, and that is Maine. And good chance she's not going to be there. But Susan Collins, she won't be there next year. And there's 4 states where that's true for where Trump won and Democrats. 5 states. I guess it's wait a minute. No, it's 6 states. It's all the swing states that have Democratic senators, and Trump won there. But my point I'm getting at here is like you had this sort of parochialism. It's King's a Democrat, Spencer. But basically, you had this situation in which parties were defined by parochial issues, by bringing up the Macon, by what they could do for their constituents. That has disappeared completely. And what you have now is a situation in which partisanship drives everything. And we have a system that is built on parochialism, right? The system is built on the idea that you look at the Senate. It's 2 senators per state. And that is to protect the interests of those states. And states back in the old days would band together to protect their regional interests. That doesn't exist anymore. exists if only if the parties only in places like New England or California where there's they're basically all solidly Democratic. So that's the biggest change. And I don't think, and we have a system again built on parochialism that doesn't know how to handle a system that has basically become one guided by partisanship and tribalism.
Yeah, I mean, this starts. I was actually just teaching about this week. There's a guy named Mark Johnson. I'll throw a pitch out there who wrote a book on the 1980 Senate elections, where that's the turning point. You have a lot of guys, George McGovern, Frank Church, who have had long, successful careers despite maybe not being ideologically where the rest of their state was. And you get all these new right wing groups, new right groups that come in and hit them early in like 1979 in ways they've never been hit on social and cultural issues, emotional issues, the rising kind of abortion, guns, things like that that had not been decisive in elections before the mid 70s. And they nationalized the elections. And once elections become national, all of a sudden it becomes very hard to be a liberal from South Dakota. I mean, I said this the other day. I was ranting in my video on Monday for my subscribers to The World According to Brian. If you're not one, join us and join Truth
Join,
or
subscribe.
Consequences as well.
Yeah.
I was saying that I don't like the idea of a Senate leader from swing state anymore because I think it was impossible for both Tom Daschle and Harry Reid because you become the boogeyman for the other side. You become the enemy, and at the same time, your own base is not happy with you because you're guided by you have to make pragmatic decisions that they don't like, and it's almost an impossible position. But it becomes very hard to be a leading Democrat from South Dakota or North Dakota or Montana after a century in which that was easy. And then look, there's
Right.
other thing is if you go back post Civil War, Republicans are the dominant political party through really 1932. Woodrow Wilson gets 2 terms, Grover Cleveland gets 2 disconnected terms, and that's it for the Democrats over a period of 70 years. Then from 32 to 68, the Democrats are the dominant party. Eisenhower wins 2 elections, but that's it. Um, then from 68 through to 92, it's Republicans. They're dominant. Then you get the numbers that Michael likes to remind us of relatively regularly about how from 92 to 2024, Democrats only lose the popular vote once. They're the dominant party, but we're seeing
Yeah.
more of the swing in the last 3 times, and some of that is just that the electoral college popular vote gap has grown as they have not expanded the House of Representatives. And that helped Trump in 2016. 2016 was kind of fluky in a lot of ways. But the fact remains that we're seeing much more swinging is I think because people are unhappy. They feel like their standard of living has gone down, not up from the last generation.
I agree. But I don't know if that's why I think this is happening. I mean, I think that the divides are much more, look, it's more cultural, I think, but I think it's also the
Yeah.
case that we've become a very narrowly, look, we're a narrowly divided country that leans slightly Democratic. People are going to balk when I say that, but it's just a fact. You can't win 7 out of 9 of the popular vote. Is it 7 out of 9? Yeah. Since 92, they've only lost popular vote twice. In 2004, barely, and in 2000, um, uh, 24, um, which is one, which also is narrowly. By the way, I love the stat. Here's a great stat for you. 2024 was the closest election in which the popular vote winner also won the electoral college since 1968. That was so. There have been closer there have been closer elections in which like for example 2004, in which the popular vote winner was a half a million person, or no, there was a less than a point gap, but um, the popular vote winner was not the person who won the electoral college, right? Not 2004, 2000. Sorry, 2000. Right. So it's the narrowest one since 68. 1.5 for Trump is very narrow victory. Bush's victory in '04 was larger. For example, not by much, but it was larger. So uh, you just have this situation now in which the country is very narrowly divided, leans like Democratic, but this small subsection of voters who are basically anti-incumbent and anti the system, anti-authority, end up basically pushing the country to one direction or the other. You see this in the swing states. I mean, look, in the last 3 elections, I think it's what, 44 of the 50 states in the same party won the state in 16, 20, and 24. Only 6 states.
Right.
Is it different? Yeah,
No,
it's
I
only
think
6
it's
states.
43. I think you're off by one, right?
No, because it was there's 7 swing states, but North Carolina was won by Republicans all 3
Oh, you're
times.
right. Yeah, you are.
So it's
But
Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So only 6 states have flipped in the past um, uh, 3 presidential elections. Okay, that's insane stat. Just for the record, just so for students of presidential history, that's an insane stat. But it also speaks to just how really just small swings in a couple of states are what determine who the president is and the direction of the country. It's pretty insane.
I'm gonna I'm gonna get myself in trouble here by trying to
Okay, I
do
like it.
math off the top of my head. But if you take Obama's win in 2008 out, I believe that that number is 39 states that have voted the same way in 2000, 2004, 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024.
What are the 5 that would not be? I guess North Carolina.
Well, the five I'm adding in, that flipped at some point in that period. Colorado voted for Bush, and then flipped. Virginia voted for Bush and then flipped. Iowa voted for uh, Gore,
Same.
Obama, Bush, and then Florida and Ohio are the other two. Am I missing one?
New Hampshire.
Oh yes, New Hampshire. Bush won in 2000 by like 1,200 votes. So that's a 12th.
That
But
sounds
I
right.
think the rest of
Nope.
them.
The only southern states would be Georgia and Florida. The only New England state would be New Hampshire. The only there's no plain states, right? Missouri. That well,
No,
Clinton won Missouri,
here's
but
the
no Democrats won since '96. And you're right. No, I think that's right. Actually, that's it. Again,
which is to say that the map starts hardening in 2000. If you look at articles, I've seen this articles of like from like 1999 on the swing states for 2000. It's places like Kentucky and Louisiana and Arkansas and West Virginia. That Bill Clinton won all of them. And in 2000, we get a new, more polarized map, red states and blue states. And you see very few states flip after that. 2008 is a little bit fluky because Obama wins Indiana really narrowly. He wins North Carolina really narrowly. But if you go back and look, it's and he won places like Virginia and Colorado that had been red states. But if you go back at the big picture and look this century, um, more than 3/4 of the states, more than 70%, 75% of the states have voted the same way in every presidential election this century.
yeah. So, okay, let me try to bring this to the current conversation because Larry Simon has complained that we were geeking out too much on this data, and that's fine. That's a fair point, Larry.
Oh, well, that pierces my heart.
I know, I know. But let me say why this is relevant to what we're talking about today, or what's happening in politics today. That you see these incredibly sharp divides, right? It's not just that, like, you have Democrats winning or Republicans winning in places where um, by narrowed margins, right? These are often double-digit margins that are happening in these states that Democrats are winning by, Republicans are winning by, which speaks to the point that these dipshits who keep arguing that, oh, Democrats should just try to win in red states. Do you understand how hard it is for Democrats to win in a state where Donald Trump has won by 10 points or more? 30 years ago, maybe you could do it, but today it's next to impossible because you have to basically, let's say that Trump won a state by 10 points. You have to basically overperform by 10 points in the next election. Now, that's maybe possible in 26, but it's awfully difficult, right? And this is something
Yeah.
Sean Trent talked about in our conversation from 2 weeks ago. Like, it's really, really hard because of how not narrowly divided, how polarized these states are. It is just incredibly difficult. Now, having said that, good poll out today from Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac tends to be a little pro-democratic, but whatever, it's fine. Shows congressional ballot with Democrats with an 11-point lead. That is massive. That's a massive lead in March of 2026. I guess what? Let me think. 7 months before the election. So maybe that changes this cycle. Maybe that this is a cycle in which red states that have gone for Trump so dramatically begin to shift. But even if it happens, one should not expect it to be a recurrent phenomenon.
No,
This is a one-off, and I do actually believe, and Brian, I'm curious what you think about this. I increasingly believe this midterm election is almost looking like historic in what Democrats might be able to accomplish based on not just the generic ballot we're seeing now, not just Trump's unbelievable unpopularity, 38% in the was the AP poll that was out this week, and but also just these special election performances. And let's get to what happened last night in Florida. Two special elections,
Florida
one of them in Trump's home
three.
district.
There
Oh,
are
there were three,
three.
but two
There were three
flips.
special, two flips. And the third one, the margin narrowed, I think, from 16 to 8. If I remember what I saw. Okay, so the third one was a Trump plus 14 district, and Democrat Edwin Perez. This is courtesy of someone who goes by the handle Florida Data Geek.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Edwin Perez narrowed the gap to 8.4 points despite having less than $20,000 in the bank. And
Wow.
importantly, the Puerto Rican heavy city of Davenport and Haines City area, which Trump won in 2024, went to Perez last night. So that was the bad special election for Democrats last night.
Yeah.
They
They
also won
flipped
a
two.
state Senate race and a state House race that were Trump won seats.
And it's important to understand too, in Florida, the Florida Democratic Party is basically the Sacramento Kings of state Democratic parties. Okay? Sorry. That's a deep cut, I realize. They suck. Florida Democrats suck, and they are a terrible state party. So to have this kind of a result is pretty shocking. I mean, look, it's the Florida 2018. Florida was the one state where everything moved against Trump except for Florida, right? Where Republicans won the Senate seat and the governorship. So I just think that you are seeing a uh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the words are for it. Like you really do see this ginormous shift in public opinion against Trump, and I mean it's getting worse. It's getting worse, Brian. Like the war is not helping at all. And Trump is getting more deranged and unstable. And, it's doing the horrible thing he said about Bob Mueller on Saturday. I mean, this is not going to get better anytime soon for Republicans. I just really see this as a trend line that gets worse and worse and worse. And by the way, if this war goes on for a few more weeks or a few more months, and oil and gas prices, jump up, I mean, his numbers could go into the to low 30s. I wouldn't be shocked at all.
That so to me, that's the big question. Sean was with us 2 weeks ago and made what I think is a cogent case for the fact that like there's a ceiling in our politics, that you're so polarized that yeah, the Democrats can win D plus or R plus 8, R plus 9 kind of seats, but they're probably not going to flip R plus 15, R plus 17 type seats, that were just too polarized for that. And then that makes the Senate safer for Republicans because the key races are all in places that Trump won by 13 to 14 points. Uh, However, I really do think that as this war drags on, we keep talking about gas prices, but it's not just gas prices, it's fertilizer prices for
Yes.
farmers, which are going to drive produce prices way up. It's somebody said that there was something was bombed that is going to affect semiconductor production. Well, you know
Yeah.
what happens if we have a shortage of semiconductors? That phone that you're all glued to, that's going to get much more expensive.
Yeah.
All of the tech that we rely on. If prices keep going up, I think you run the risk of three things for Trump. One is that you demoralize Republicans who say, well, what's the point of going out and voting when things are this bad? You energize the people who are angry and they show up in much greater numbers. And you end up getting the risk for Republicans is you end up getting electorates that look like these special elections where D plus double digits, the average gain is D plus 11 in these special elections. If you get that electorate, it opens up all kinds of doors because candidates do still matter. They may only matter 2 or 3 points, but all of a sudden, if it's a D plus 11 electorate, all of a sudden those R plus 15 seats, those
Yeah.
are in play.
Yeah. And look,
And I think that that's really the question is if things stay this bad, even for another 2 months, I think it's going to cook a lot of Republican gooses. I think that Republicans are going to have a real problem. And the discussion, the narrative in the fall is going to come down to three things. How big of a Democratic margin do you get in the House? Does the Senate flip? And people are going to be 50-50 on that. And are there any surprise governorships that where Democrats come out of nowhere and win races in places that nobody thought they had a chance in? Um, those will be the three narratives in the fall. That's the kind of wave that we might be heading towards. And you might see things. I always flash back to 2006 and Mike DeWine and
2006
Rick
is the comp, my
Santorum.
friend. 2006 is the comp.
They DeWine and Santorum, two-term senators who both lost by double digits in swing states, which is almost unheard of.
Yep.
I can't think of
Well,
other
Santorum
non-scandal.
was a pretty shitty candidate. So I mean, he
He
was
was, but he still won in 2000, even as Al Gore was winning
that
Pennsylvania.
is
He
true.
still was a
That is true.
two-term U.S. senator. Like I can say that was because Democrats nominated a terrible candidate in 2000 and got a good one in 2006. But still, that race was a double-digit race for an incumbent senator in a swing state,
Who was
and
it?
the
Who was
same
it?
thing in Ohio.
Who was it? It was Casey in '06, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bob Casey beat him.
You had the Casey situation.
He had the Casey name, but like those are possibilities. If I were Susan Collins, I'd read up on Lincoln Chafee's defeat in 2006 and realize that people can like you personally and decide they don't want your party to control the Senate, and in which
I
case
agree.
you're done. I think that there's a lot of risk right now for Republicans. And by the way, I think that we might be entering into a possibility here that is good politically for Democrats, but could be bad. The current debate on Capitol Hill, the Department of Homeland Security remains closed, which anyone who's tried to fly anywhere, like RIP Michael, you got to try to fly to London in a few weeks. You better show up about 10 hours early.
I know.
With the current state of TSA. And so they've hatched this plan of we're going to pass an appropriations bill that funds the rest of DHS outside of ICE and pass that in appropriations. And then we're going to do a reconciliation bill so that just with a 50-seat majority, we can fund ICE and maybe add some more war funding because that'll be really unpopular.
Right.
Um, and
And
I
Trump
think that this
rejected
is,
it.
but and Trump rejected it. But if it happens, it's this weird thing that could hurt Democrats policy wise, and help or hurt Republicans politically. Hurting Republicans politically because the stuff that's going to have to go into a reconciliation bill to get majorities in both houses is going to be very unpopular. Very, very unpopular.
It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I
Yeah,
mean, I
that's
can't make this
fair.
point enough. Like none of this stuff matters. Look,
That's fair.
they passed a big beautiful bill last year, and it was incredibly unpopular, and people just forgotten about it. It's not even an
Wait, wait,
issue.
wait. Michael, you don't think that when people get their refunds next month, they're going to do a political 180? I've been
Right.
assured by
Right.
Republican consultants that that's what's coming.
I just look, this is I've been saying this for a few weeks now. I'm just say it again. People have made up their minds about Trump and they don't like him and they don't like his second term. And you've got close to half the country strongly disapproves of him. I've looked at the recent polls, but the numbers are generally around high 40s, even over 50% in some cases, who strongly disapprove of Trump. Those numbers are not shifting. You see this in every single special election. The energy is completely with Democrats. I'm sorry, like this isn't complicated, right? And you don't see dramatic. People are going to go, well, a lot could happen to you now on election day. No, no, not a lot's going to happen. The stuff generally, the way things are going in like early in the year, it's generally how it goes by the end of the year. And so, to me, the bigger issue is like how bad does it get for Trump and how good does it get for Democrats? I don't think it gets any better for Republicans at this point. I think they are cooked. And the real question now to me is can they hold on to the Senate? So since I know I got to finish up a little bit early today, let's quickly cycle through the various Senate races that we've been seeing over the past week because that's an interesting
Can we
event. Please
can
go
we
ahead.
start with Texas because I have to
Go
rant.
right ahead. Let's do
Um,
Texas.
Somehow Trump says that he's glad that Bob Mueller has died. Now, keep in mind, Mueller is one of the very few wealthy or children of privilege in the 60s who volunteered to go to Vietnam and serve his country honorably. And Trump, it was just disgusting. And yet, Michael, it was not the most disgusting thing that he posted on Truth Social over the weekend. He had this unhinged rant about James Tallarico,
Yeah.
um, where first of all he managed to be ableist, racist, and lean into hyper aggressive, like online masculinity nonsense. In the same thing, but like bragging that Republicans held all their opposition research back on James Tallarico, and that he's even worse than Jasmine Crockett, despite her being low IQ, which is the oldest racist trope in the book. I mean, um,
But here's what's interesting. He hasn't endorsed anybody yet, and he's not going
no,
to.
no,
He's not
he's
going
not.
to.
And,
He
and you know,
basically said,
Michael,
I'm going to endorse somebody, hoping Paxton would drop out. Paxton didn't drop out, and Trump, as is always the case, wimped out and basically is doing nothing, which means good
yeah,
chance that Paxton wins the primary.
and Paxton is giving the like Reagan address at CPAC this weekend.
Wow. Oh,
He's like one of their headliners. And it's in Texas. And the thing is, Ken Paxton is really, really, really flawed. And there are two arguments on James Tallarico. One argument, which I call traditional thinking, is James Tallarico is all these things that have come out about God is non-binary, and that like the white race is racism or something like that. Lots of these things that are culturally going to get him in trouble in Texas. And the old thinking is, okay, look, it's a red state. Paxton might be corrupt, but Tallarico is unelectable because of these things. But I bring people to campus. I talk to my students as well. And one thing that has come out increasingly in these conversations is that people are craving authenticity. It's part of what a lot of people like in Donald Trump. And if James Tallarico says, look, you may not agree with everything I say. There are things I wish I had back, that I could say them in different ways, but I'm always going to be authentic and honest and open with you. It might play. Now, I see your skepticism, and I'm going
I
to
don't
bridge
buy it.
this to another race.
I don't buy it.
But that look,
The
you,
Republicans are going to
I
run
am
$100 million
skeptical.
in ads pointing out that Tyler Rico said God is non-binary, and trust me, that's going to matter a lot more than you know this other stuff. I'm sorry, that's just how I see it. Now, it doesn't mean that
I
Trump
think
doesn't.
that
That mean that he doesn't win. I don't know. That he could still win, but I don't know that I. The authenticity
okay,
thing, I just it works up to a degree. Up to a
right.
degree.
Right. I'm just saying it can neutralize it to a degree, and I can see the people out there thinking to themselves, okay, but you two guys keep railing against Plattner, and the difference is in Texas, Democrats don't have an incumbent governor who they can run for Senate. In Maine, they do. They don't need to take the kind of chance. Inherently, these candidates who would have lost by his normal standards pre-Trump elections, they would have definitely lost. They are inherently risky, right, as your candidate. And in Texas, Democrats really didn't have a choice. There was no safe candidate unless you wanted to do another dance with Colin Allred, who had proved to be a fairly insipid campaigner and speaker and everything in 2020. They didn't have a bench, right? So, like, I'm not saying Tallarico will win. I am saying, though, that I don't think this is a slam dunk. And I think that Ken Paxton is the kind of candidate that people recoil from because he's so monumentally corrupt.
Look, we've definitely made. I mean, had this conversation, and I don't disagree with you about your overall take. I just think my sort of point here is that the authenticity matters only so much. At the end of the day, like what matters more is the candidate aligned with the views of the electorate, and
Yeah, except you're the one who's always saying issue positions don't really matter. Agenda doesn't
they
really
don't.
matter. So I buy that to an extent. I think you're right. Don't get
But
me
these
wrong.
aren't
I
issue
think all
positions.
this
No, no,
stuff
no, no, no.
hurts
Those aren't
Biden.
issue positions. Those are vibes, right? So it's a red state, and
Fair.
you're going to basically like it's a religious state, a lot of evangelicals, and you're going to basically have in this ad in which the guy says God is non-binary. It says all these other trans rights. Now, does that outweigh people's revulsion with Trump? I don't know the answer to that question. None of us do. I'm just saying that. The vibes thing helps to a degree, but I do think, especially in a red state like Texas that leans Republican and has for quite some time, it takes a lot to overcome that, and I don't know that maybe it
I
happens. I don't know.
agree.
Maybe it does happen. Maybe I have no
I
idea.
I mean, and look, Democrats are Texas was the case where I don't think they had a safe choice. In some of these other races, they are going to make a decision of how high is their risk tolerance for fumbling away elections. They're going to have that choice in Maine. They're going to have that choice to some extent in Iowa. And it's do you take the safe bet um, who may not be as exciting to you as a base voter, or do you go for the exciting thing that has a lot of potential problems? The Graham Plattners, who have a lot of baggage, and it's going to determine, first of all, how much money Democrats have to sink into some of these races, how competitive they are. You know, in Iowa, the two candidates, Zach Walz is the state senator who's the left candidate. And Josh Turk is a state rep who is the center left candidate, and he's just about to get a huge boost on the airways from Vote Vets. He's a veteran, um,
Okay.
and was a para Olympian, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. But like Iowa's a state. Trump won it by 13 points. The last Democrat to win a Senate race there was Tom Harkin in 2008. So it's,
Wow.
can Democrats overcome that, and can they overcome that with someone who's left? I don't know. This is the defining question that we're headed towards in the Senate.
No, and I'm going to say it again. We don't know the answer. We're not going to know the answer for a while. Let's talk about two other states where Democrats have more of an advantage. First of all, Michigan. Interesting doing this week. We had a couple of competing polls today. One that had Mallory and McMorrow up by a significant, like about 7 points, I think it was 6, 7. And then we had Haley Stevens, who was up by a few points. Um, Interesting. I think one of the polls she actually was, Haley Stevens was ranked third. Um, and
I
then we
believe
have,
each.
go
Well, I
ahead.
was going to say, I believe each of their respective polls show the other one in third place,
I think that's
which
right.
tells
And
you
that's right.
how the two campaigns see who they see as their main rival.
But I want to, okay, but there's a third candidate. What's his first name?
Abdul
El
Al
Said
Sayed,
is Abdul, right. Abdul
former
El Said.
Former Wayne County Director of Health.
Right. Who is up to this point, I think, running probably the most anti-Semitic Senate campaign this cycle. Um, Gubernatorial goes to guy James Fishback, the Republican down in Florida. But he is hosting an event this week with Congressman Summer Lee and YouTuber Hassan Piker, who has a long record of making anti-Semitic statements that
Misogynistic, anti-American.
misogynistic, anti-American, anti-Semitic, and so forth. And Piker has become a bit of a flashpoint. Was it Brad Schneider? I think it was a congressman from Illinois, went out and attacked him publicly. Third Way has been going after him. I mean, I have been doing my part by attacking him and also attacking the pundit bros at Pod Save America for continually platforming Hassan Piker. Here's the thing. This is just dumb politics. Okay, put aside the anti-Semitism of Pike. He's an unlikable person. He really is. He's likable if you're like a dirtbag leftist. And otherwise, he's not likable. And I think he has said incredibly obnoxious things. He's denied the rapes took place October 7th. He's praised Hezbollah. He's praised China. He's praised Russia. He had this whole bit about Crimea, a river, about Russia taking over Crimea a couple of
And you
years
didn't even
ago.
you
He said the
you
U.S.
you
deserved
didn't even get to the
9/11.
worst thing yet. There it is.
What? Yeah,
I was
that's the worst
waiting.
thing. Yeah, the U.S. deserved 9/11. I mean, he's just kind of a jerk, and he's not appealing to anybody outside of like maybe. And now, look, maybe it matters among a small base of Democratic voters, but I just want to remind people that there are not that many more Arab voters in Michigan than there are Jewish voters in Michigan. Okay, and Jewish voters tend to be pretty, you know, consistent voters. So the effort by Saeed, by the way, has literally his entire campaign is about attacking APAC. He had a tweet the other day where he said the oil prices were the result of APAC, which is just classic anti-Semitic trope right there, basically blaming the Jews for economic woes. So I think, look, we'll see what happens. But I kind of think candidates like Saeed, maybe they spike a little bit, but they end up losing support. The problem in Michigan is that it's such a narrowly contested race with three candidates who are all getting a share of the vote that you could imagine a scenario in which Saeed squeaks in there. I doubt it. I think he has a ceiling. But this increasingly looks to me like McMorrow's race to lose because Stevens is not breaking away from the pack. She has a lot of money. She doesn't seem running a good campaign. Doesn't seem to be a good campaigner. People I talk to in the state are unimpressed with her in general. McMorrow's tried to sort of skate between Stevens and Saeed on Israel questions because it is a bigger issue in Michigan because of a large Arab community. But she seems to be running a better rate than Stevens is, even though Stevens is the sort of favorite of the DC establishment.
Michael, there is no race in America that annoys me more than this one.
It's
This
really
should
annoying. I
be
agree.
a safe Democratic race. McMurrow and Stevens would both be good senators. They probably disagree
And they
very
would win
slightly on
easily.
some issues.
They'd win.
Yeah,
They'd
it
win handily
win
in
easily.
November.
The only risk here to Democrats is that they decide to destroy each other because the two sides really don't like each other. The McMurrow and the Stevens side, it's become nasty. And they destroy each other, and that lets El Said win and hands Mike Rogers a Senate seat because El Said is an extremist. Again, I don't think there's any room in the Democratic Party for someone who says that America deserved 9/11. I don't think there's any room in
I don't
either
either.
political party. There shouldn't be. When Jerry Falwell said the same
But
thing,
can I interject one thing? There should not be a placement party for somebody who calls Orthodox Jews inbred, but yet there is.
no, 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 this shouldn't be controversial. And the fact that El Said would campaign with a guy like that, he doesn't belong in the Senate. And by the way, Summer Lee doesn't belong in Congress if she's okay with that. Um,
I agree.
And
I agree.
these are basic values, but also just politics 101. Do you know how offensive it is to the vast majority of Americans to say that America deserved 9/11? It's
Yes.
reprehensible. And so
It is
El
a
Said,
losing campaign message.
right. El Said is the danger here from a Democratic standpoint. And look, the problem I think comes down to this. Stevens' ideological positioning is probably better for the state of Michigan. She held a swing district. I've been
Yeah.
told that she's pretty, very good in talking to people like in small groups, one on one kind of thing, and connecting with them. But she's not great at giving speeches. She's not particularly charismatic. She's the Colin Allred
No.
of Michigan, and McMurrow is incredibly charismatic, incredibly comfortable at using social media in a very real way. She literally is out there having beers with people, and is the candidate who people envision themselves wanting to do that with. And so she is, I think probably the favorite at this point by a little bit, but it's very frustrating that we're in this situation because I think at some point in the fall, a Democratic super PAC is probably going to have to go in and go very negative on El Said to drive
Yeah.
his numbers down to make sure that the nominee is one of the other two, because either of them is going to win by like 8 points, I would say, given the environment.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
And I really do think that, I know that I said before that like there's a way for El Said to squeak in there. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a ceiling on his candidacy. I think probably around 25 to 30% maybe. I'd be surprised if he can do better than that. And look, as I said, he is running, this campaign that is obsessively focused on Israel. Surely is going to alienate Jewish voters in the state. He's also running. He's also endorsed by Bernie Sanders. He's running pretty far to the left. That just is not the politics of Michigan. I do not think he's
No,
going to win, but he is certainly spreading a lot of anti-Jewish hate. So he can sort of rest comfortably with that. Speaking of anti-Jewish candidates, well,
oh
kind of,
God.
but yes, Maine, Graham Plattner, Mr. Nazi Tattoo. He is getting pilloried this week by Janet Mills, who's been running a series of ads, um, attacking um, Plattner, and particularly for his uh, past comments about women and rape. He's been on record saying that women who are raped what is it he said, should not get inebriated or something. He sort of blamed women for being raped, basically. It was sort of shouldn't wear a short skirt kind of thing. I want to just tell you my thing on this race. I think Jan Mills is going to win. I really do. I think Plattner is a problematic candidate, and I think that the Maine voters are going to wake up to that reality. And I also think that the biggest problem he has is that Maine is a state full of old people, and the Democratic electorate is mostly female. I think that is the problem. Can I say also on the record, and this is about El Said too, but this is got to my point about Son Piker. The left, I'm not like anti-liberal. I mean, I'm actually pretty left and center guy, but I find it crazy to me that the people on the left who that they rally around. Okay, like Bernie Sanders is unlikable. He just is. He's an unlikable person. I mean, I don't think people really charmed him, except unless you were like a fellow traveler. Saeed in Michigan. Actually, let's go Hassan Piker. He is unlikable. He is deeply unlikable. He says awful things on a regular basis. And Plattner, I find Plattner just genuinely unlikable. He's not charismatic to me. He comes across like kind of a bit of a know-it-all, a bit of a jerk, and I just don't get what it is about these guys that are so appealing. Is it because they believe? I don't know. Maybe it's they think that like he's authentic. They want to be more authentic or something. Oh, Elizabeth Warren endorsing platinum. We'll talk about that in a second. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I unleashed a hell of a rant on her the other day. We can talk about her in a second, but I think actually that to some extent it is the same thing that's going on the right, which is that these people on the left like these people because someone like Hassan Piker makes us mad. We're the problem. We're the squishy
I
establishment,
guess.
and anybody who pisses us off must be great because they pissed us off. Um, and I think that that drives some of it on the left. And there's also I think a sense on the left that like we tried the establishment politicians, the Obamas of the world, and it didn't get us what we wanted. So we
It
better
won two
go
terms.
harder edge. Yeah, yeah. They don't seem to understand that their
Largest
views
popular victory since 1996, but sure, whatever.
they don't understand their views are not a majority in America. It's the same problem the far right has. The old Jim DeMint thing of, well, I'd rather have 30 pure senators than a majority. No, you don't get anything done that way. You don't ever accomplish any of your goals. And I think that some of this on the left is about pissing off the establishment, Democratic establishment, and liking people who the Democratic establishment hates. And some of it is also, frankly, that internet rabbit holes are leading people to very bad places.
Right.
And to on both sides of the political spectrum, the kinds of voices that are rising in the attention economy, we'll call it, are extremists. They are people who shouldn't be
Right.
anywhere near public office. They're people who shouldn't have any influence in our conversations. I mean, you've got the Candace Owens stuff on the
Right.
right, and you've got people like Hassan Piker on the left. They speak to alienated people who feel like society has basically left them behind in some way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
they say, well, we've got to go for the like radical change. And that's sort of how you get these people. But I mean, I I don't like Graham Plattner. I understand the appeal of like he's an anti-politician. What I find ironic is a lot of the people who spend half of their day screaming about how awful John Fetterman is are pushing a
Yeah.
candidate who fits the exact same basket and could well be John Fetterman 2.0.
100%. But my point on Platter is that I think I don't care what the polls say right now. I really don't. I mean, it's very early, and primary polls are often not that good. I just think that at the end of the day, this is a bad electorate for someone like Plattner. It just is.
I'm
It's an older
I
electorate.
I
It. Go ahead.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I don't want to come off as wishy-washy in any way, shape, or form. The only thing I would say is everything that Michael and I are telling you, whether we're talking about Texas, whether we're talking about Maine, is boils down to this is the way politics have always been. These are the rules of the game, so to speak. And if something fundamental is shifting in American politics, and I don't think you can rule that out right now, given some of what we've seen in the last couple of years, then it's possible that this is wrong. But everything we know about politics says Janet Mills should win this race. She's the two-term governor. It's the
Yes.
oldest state in the country. The Democratic electorate leans towards women, and there are women who have been repelled as they find out about what Graham Plattner says. And by the way, I had a friend who's a Plattner fan who was very upset that Mills is this is all wrong. They don't understand modern politics, that everything has changed and none of this stuff matters. This is politics, folks.
Really.
It's not
This
tiddlywinks.
is
If
politics.
you say
Yeah.
something,
Exactly.
you're gonna get hit for it if you say something bad. And Plattner's good, doing the same thing that I'm saying Tallarico should do, which is saying, oh, I'm a changed person. This is the past. I
Right.
wish I had, said things differently. And we'll see. I don't think it works, especially because Mills is going to be able to say, I can win in this state. I can beat Susan Collins. She's going to make an electability message. And the other thing, Michael, I don't know that they're scheduled yet, but I assume the candidates are going to debate. And I don't
Yeah.
know that Graham Plattner can
Good
hold
luck,
up in
Graham
the
Plattner.
debate.
I
What
agree. I
experience does
agree.
he have to do that kind of thing? So I do think that Mills wins at the end. And this brings me to the rant I made the other day. Did you see the Wall Street Journal article on the attempt to overthrow Chuck Schumer?
I did. I did.
So the it seems like the leading force of
Give the
this
man
is
some love. Give the man some
well,
love.
the man is. presided over. He inherited in 2006. He inherited the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. Democrats had 45 senators. When he relinquished that title after the 2008 election cycle, they had 59
Yeah.
senators. Then he came in, and if you put aside 2018, which was an awful cycle, God could have run the Democratic campaign committee that cycle, and they still weren't going to get a Senate majority because of where
Right.
the lack of targets. But 2020, he wins a majority in the Senate. 2022, he keeps his majority and defies predictions in doing that and grows it even.
I know.
Um,
You know,
and
Chuck Schumer is an
he's done a
underappreciated
good job. But
Democratic
what
leader.
drives me crazy is Elizabeth Warren thinking that her political instincts are better than Chuck Schumer's. I said this for my subscribers the other day. If you look at when she's been on the ballot in presidential years, she does worse than the Democratic presidential
She does
nominee
worse than the
in
Democratic nominee. Exactly.
Massachusetts. She's an underperformer. She is not some sort of someone with great political instincts who can identify all this stuff.
And
And
she
she
blew a significant polling, not she had a polling lead in the 2020 presidential election, and she blew it.
Yeah, and she had a money lead. She had a lot of money, and she
Yep. She had a
blew
lot
it.
of money.
And the people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders who think that they know better, or there was a consultant who Michael brought up a couple of weeks ago, Rebecca Katz, who said, "Well, I think Chuck did a great job in 2006. I think we don't win the Senate without him, but I don't know that he knows that things have changed." And she's the one working on Plattner's campaign. I don't think these people understand politics, quite frankly. I don't think that they have a
No,
good sense of these things. I think they understand online politics and where the social media world
I
is.
don't. I just think
But that's
Warren.
not really the electorate.
I think this is more about ideological for her. I think she wants to see. I think she wants to be like the sort of, I don't know, the face of the left, particularly once Bernie leaves the
Right.
scene. Is I think she thinks endorsing Biden
But
benefits her. I look. I don't just because they endorse Biden doesn't mean that she thinks he's going to win or that she even wants him to win. I mean, sometimes the endorsements really for their own benefits, um, to be
I
associated with
think
like that
that's
kind of
true.
element of it. Although I'm
The
Janet Mills,
irony
I'm pretty fucking pissed off
the,
about
the,
this.
the irony of Elizabeth Warren endorsing Graham Platter and thinking that she's going to be the face of the left after Bernie. Do you know how old she is, Michael?
She's 70 something, 75.
Um, I just looked this up. She apparently shares a birthday with me. So as of June 22nd, she will be 77 years old. Um, she and the fact that she's opposing a fellow female Democratic elected official whose
I know,
only sin
I
is
know,
that she's old, it
I
is
know,
very
I know.
ironic when Elizabeth Warren. It's like trading from Bernie to Elizabeth Warren is like going from a car that is barely running and has 150,000 or 200,000 miles on it, and you drop down 20,000 miles.
Look, I spent a lot of time with Warren on the campaign trail in 2019 and 2020. I spent a lot of time following her around, going to events. I wrote a big piece for her for the Globe when I was there. I think she is a good politician, but I don't know that I think her instincts are as solid as she thinks they are. By the way, I want to mention about Maine really quick, just the gamblers out there. Right now in Kalshi, it is uh, she is a it is Plotner's favor is 76 to 24. I'm gonna say to you right now, that's a buying opportunity. Just putting it out there. I did notice, by the way, interesting enough, in the Texas Senate race, which has been favoring Cornyn for the past, like, I don't know, couple of weeks, ever since that almost endorsement from Trump. Uh, Now they have Paxton ahead 56 to 40, 56, 46, I guess, 56, 40, 45, rounding up, I guess. You missed your chance. In fact,
Okay,
you can still get
let
it
me
at negative money, but it's a good opportunity for you to,
let me make a slightly bold statement. I
please.
think Texas and Maine are going to get a lion's share of the attention focused on the Senate, at least through the main primary in the middle of June. I actually think the Senate majority is going to come down to three states that are neither of those: Iowa, Ohio, and Alaska. I think Susan Collins is going to lose in Maine. I think that Maine
I
is going
agree.
by election day. We're going
I
to
think even
assume
if
that
Plattner wins, I think she probably loses.
yeah,
That's my guess.
and I think North Carolina is not going to be close. And Republicans keep pushing this New Hampshire thing, which is utterly absurd. John Sununu is
Not
not
gonna
going
happen.
to win. Um, Okay, but I really think that this comes down to the kind of blue collary places that Democrats did well through the Obama years or could win in. I mean, like if we were 10 years ago, the Senate would seem off the table for Republicans because Ohio and Iowa we would see as leaning Democratic
Right.
at this
Right.
point. But I really think that those places that have suffered, the Farm Belt has gotten hammered by Trump's tariffs. Fertilizer prices go up. Who's that hurt? That's going to hurt the farmers,
Yep.
and be a real problem in Iowa. I think those are going to be the three most interesting races because they're the places where there's going to be a lot of economic reason that that they should be opportunities for Democrats. And in Ohio and Iowa, they're places where Democrats were competitive relatively recently and have really fallen on hard times. But it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see. And I think that the Senate comes down to those three races. I think that if Democrats are winning the Texas Senate race, they're probably also winning Iowa, Ohio, and Alaska. I mean, I could paint a case
I don't
where
know.
with the
I don't know.
Hispanic backlash that goes, where Texas goes alone. But I kind of think that those races end up better for the Democrats than Texas.
Okay, let's round up. I got to finish up here quickly. Let's round up with two quick points. We mentioned the Florida special election. Again, two flips for Democrats there. Big question I have about that is, does this dissuade Florida Republicans from redistricting, knowing how much the trend lines are against them? Do they want to put more than one House race in closer proximity to Democrats? I suspect that they don't want to do it, but I don't know if DeSantis much as push it through anyway. You got any thoughts on this?
Um, I think that they will redistrict, first of all, because I think some of those Republicans are in R plus high single digit places in Florida are at risk, and they will try to shore them up. I think if they go for anything other than a two-seat gain, anything larger than that really has a chance of blowing up on them, where they end up making South Florida, they end up making two or three other districts competitive. Um, from what I understand, that there are a couple of places where they could legitimately, like Orlando, where they can kind of like draw a Democrat out and do it fairly safely. So I think they do it. I also think Ron DeSantis wants to be president, so he's going to keep pushing this to like appeal to the MAGAites. But it's something to watch in April because if they end up not doing anything and the Virginia referendum passes, both of which are in April, Democrats are going to net seats out of redistricting, and that
Yeah,
is going to be one of the biggest own goals that we've ever seen. And
agree.
it's kind of
Agree.
crazy but that is what to watch. I think Republicans in Florida do something, but these races should have scared them. They really, really should have. And I think it will get the congressional delegation to go to their friends in the state legislature and say, "Well, don't do this to me.
I don't
Don't
know,
put me
man.
at risk like that."
We'll see what happens. I'm a little more skeptical about this. I mean, I do think a lot of these states are also by the holding out to see if the Supreme Court bails them out on the Voting Rights Act or gives them a lifeline, the Voting Rights Act. I don't think that's going to happen in enough time to affect the primaries, but we will see. One last thing I wanted to bring up in Pennsylvania, your boy, John Fetterman,
Oh, Jesus.
was the sole vote in committee to push Mark Wayne Mullen's nomination to the floor, where he was um, confirmed as HHS secretary, even though he literally has no qualifications for the job whatsoever. Really, no management experience, no experience in Homeland Security. I mean, this is a clown show. But Fetterman, in nominating him, and I'm sorry, not nominating, in voting to confirm him, I think his political career probably already over. Now it's definitely over.
I think that John Fetterman is not very good at politics. First of all,
Ooh,
he
no
saved
shit.
Republicans a lot of headaches by getting this nomination out of committee. There's a way to discharge a nomination from committee, but it takes a lot of effort. And he saved them from having to undertake the effort, and he did it for nothing. He didn't extract anything. Every other senator in the Senate would have extracted a concession. They would have
He's
gotten a
such
vote
a,
on something.
I hate to say this,
I
and this is not my politics. He's a prick. He really is. He's a prick.
he does seem to be. And look, I'm not as worked up about Fetterman and Martin Heinrich supporting the nomination as a lot of
So
people
why did
because
Heinrich support it? Do you know?
Heinrich issued a statement saying that Mullen's a friend of his, that they are friends and that he can talk to him. They've had debates. He likes the idea of having a secretary who he can call and actually get an
Right.
answer. Um,
That's great.
and but like I'm not as worked up about this as some because this he was going to become secretary regardless. And I think that the hitting people over cabinet votes I'm not as concerned about because the thing is, if they didn't confirm Mark Wayne Mullen, it would have been somebody else who's just as bad. There's not you're not going to have a good cabinet secretary, and if anything, I would rather have a cabinet secretary than some of the acting people that Trump has hit upon when he decides to blatantly ignore the advice and consent
I
process.
guess. I just
But
think, look, the thing with,
I think
just about
Fetterman's
Fetterman.
I just don't think Fetterman runs again. I think he's angling for a media career. I think he's miserable in the Senate. Someone made the very good point that he isn't able to horse trade on something like that because a lot of the horse trading happens on the Senate floor where John Fetterman cannot go because he refuses to wear a suit. And so he has to sit in the
Interesting.
cloakroom during votes, which was an interesting point. But he's just poorly fit for the job. I didn't support the guy in the primary in 2022. I don't think that this is the problem with loose cannon, iconoclastic individualist types in politics. They can often turn out to be disasters, and I just don't think he runs again. He will never win another primary. He knows it, and
I
he
think,
will go
look,
the Kyrsten Sinema route.
yeah, I mean, the thing I'll say of Fetterman, just in somebody's defense, is that, you know, look, he sabotaged his political career. There's no point. There's no other way around it. And you know, Spencer makes a good point. Maybe he does it to be just because he wants to be a pain in the ass. I do wonder how much of this is because of his stroke and what that's affected his behavior. Because look, Cinema did the same thing, and she self-destructed, and she, was a one-term senator. And Kirsten Sinema had a bright political career ahead of her. Fetterman could have had it also. He screwed it up. But I think in his case, like in Cinema's case, it's because she's just a huge narcissist. And in Fetterman's case, that might also be the case, or it might be that his stroke really did affect him. So I don't know. But I do think that his political career is pretty much over at this point. He's not going to win a Democratic nomination, a Democratic primary for Senate, and he probably won't. And he's not going to run as a Republican. He wouldn't. And he runs as independent. He won't win there either. So I think he's done.
No, I mean, I think he's done politically at the end of this term, and I really don't think he enjoys the Senate, so I can't imagine him running again. I can see him running for president as an independent at some point, but I think he camps to like a John Fetterman show or being the House liberal at Fox News or something like that.
No,
After this
I don't
term,
think he'll even do that. I think he's. We won't hear much from him, I think. But
I
I
think
could be
you
wrong.
underestimate greed, Michael, and the
That is
value of
true. That is true. But there's
the
more ways to
almighty
make money
dollar.
than being a media star, I'd say.
By the way, just
One
one
more thing I'm going to point. Go ahead. I have one.
I was
You
going to
have one.
point two quick things out. This is just breaking. The House Budget Chairman Jody Arrington, who is retiring, not going to be on the ballot in November, is said that if they do reconciliation bill, he's going to push the fraud spending cuts, i.e., more Medicaid and food stamp cuts. Which is like if you were trying to see how many seats you could lose, that would be a great strategy. So by all means, Jody, try it. It's a great idea. Give
Yeah.
it a shot. See how it goes.
Speaking of shitty ideas, interesting tweet from Alex Ward, who's a national reporter at the Wall Street Journal, who says at least three congressional Republicans, including chairs of the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, are hinting strongly that a ground operation in Iran is planned and potentially be underway soon. Let me say for the record, once the was it the 82nd or the 101st Airborne, I think it was 101st, was sent to the region, I think this was basically a fait accompli. They were going to put ground troops onto likely Karg Island in an effort to open up the Straits of Hormuz to traffic. I just want to point out that this is a own goal, that the problem of the Straits of Hormuz being closed is a direct result of the war that the US and Israel initiated. So they are trying to solve a problem that they literally created. This war is a fucking disaster, and it is so incompetently being run. And if there are ground troops on Iranian soil, I don't care if it's just a few thousand. It will not be 100,000. It'll be a few thousand. The backlash is going to be significant. I do think that a lot of the MAGA folks have bitten their tongue about this up to this point. I do not think I do wonder if it lasts, but I just think this is going to further undercut Trump's support and really just give a boost to Democrats. I mean, nobody wants this war. Nobody wants it. Okay, Israel wants it. That's fine. No one in the US wants it, except for Trump, it seems. and
No,
this is not gonna end
that
well.
is Lindsey Graham
Oh,
erasure.
and the Saudis want it. The Saudis want it, but nobody gives
Yeah,
a shit that the Saudis are trying to like influence the president. Only when Israel does it. But
but
yeah, no, it is.
that's really Lindsey Graham erasure. He
Lindsey Graham has completely fucking lost his mind. Like he has completely lost
yes,
his mind.
it's
He's
insane.
nuts.
He is absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: this is going to do deep damage to Trump in multiple ways. There is no way you could send ground troops in without casualties. That is an unfortunate reality of warfare here. And Americans coming home in body bags doesn't go well for the party in power. That's a historical fact.
Look, I'm
Um,
just yeah, and I really hope that doesn't
and
happen. For any American to
right,
die
right.
for this stupid fucking war
We
is a shanda. That's a shame.
absolutely, absolutely. It is unnecessary. It is horrific. And then Trump has tried to politicize the deaths of those service members have lost their lives. It's awful. Okay, but that
Yes.
that's what turned people against George W. Bush as much as anything else was American service members dying in Iraq. And secondly, it's going to hurt him because Michael's right that there are a lot of MAGAites who really believe in America first, and they don't want to be in war in Iran. Um, and they're biting their tongues because right now they think that there's it's only a sort of war. They can't see it. There's nothing visible. There's no ground troops. There's no big changes. Anything. The minute you send ground troops in, the minute that it becomes okay, this is not going to be a short thing. This is going to be a long lasting war. I think you're going to see more of a split. Now, is it a large percentage? No, I think it's not. I think that every
Yeah.
poll we've got shows that the vast majority of Republicans support what Trump's doing because Trump's doing it, and they really are a personality cult. However, it does not have to be a lot to flip elections come November.
No.
If it's 5% of Republicans who either stay home or vote Democratic because they're that angry, that's enough to could shift 5, 6, 7 seats in the House, maybe 10.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
it's just that this is politically. If Donald Trump sat down, if he had gotten back in office and said on his first day, "How can I make the first 2 years like maximize the pain for Republicans in the midterm and
I don't know how we
tank
would do it
my
differently.
brand most?" He really this is exactly how he'd
I
do
don't
it.
know how I legitimately don't know how we do it differently. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah. Uh,
All right, listen,
can I make
finish
just
okay,
one
go
more
ahead, sorry.
quick point?
Quickly.
One other thing we didn't talk about. Supreme Court heard a case on Monday that has the potential to have somewhat of an impact on the election. And the observers, the educated commentariat of like Supreme Court reporters is actually split on where they're going to go. But it seemed possible to probable that they are going to rule that all mail ballots must be accepted by election day or must be
Yeah.
received by election day to be counted. Um, and if they do that, it's going to have some ramifications, especially in some of the blue states that have pretty generous windows for receiving ballots. And Democrats are going to have to undertake, I think, a pretty significant push to get people who want to do mail ballots to vote earlier, especially because given how unreliable Trump's USPS is.
I actually think that's the kind of issue that probably gets overstated how much of an impact it is. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, I don't know that Democrats are much more energized to vote in this cycle, and they're much more excited to vote. And
I
I
agree.
mean, we'll see how much it makes a difference. I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. But it is, by the way, it is ridiculous that the Supreme Court is doing that. It's just one more indication of how the Supreme Court, this awful Supreme Court, puts its thumb on the scale to help Republicans. Okay, got to
That's
finish
it.
up. I got stuff I got to do. But this
Yep.
was great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And Brian, always great to see you. If you've not
It's great
subscribed
to
to Word
see.
According to Brian, please take care of that right now and subscribe. Also, yeah, subscribe to Truth the Consequences. Do that as well. And see you. Well, okay, next week, I think we're going to see you. The week after, I'm not as sure. I'm going
Yep.
to be in England, so I'll not be seeing you then.
Yeah, I will make up for Michael. I will probably do an election night live in 2 weeks because the Wisconsin Supreme Court election is two
There you go.
Tuesdays. So I might do that if you need your fix of us. And then we'll be back later in April
One beer
with
to
maybe
Jim.
some Yeah, one beer Jew. We'll be back later in April. Maybe we'll have the guys at the Crystal Ball, maybe bring them on about the redistricting initiative since they're based in Virginia or something like that. We'll have some guests that will be fun. So tune in.
Spencer, want to take that question? Spencer's question. You want to answer that, Brian? What's your Substack called?
I can't see the questions.
The World According to
According
Brian.
to Brian. So
Check it out.
yeah, I don't. It's a recording studio thing. I don't see the comments. I don't know why, but
Okay.
that's
Well,
Substack recording studio.
I will take the bullet for you on that one. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
All right,
Hang in there.
take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.